Welcome to Bandit's Keep. I'm Daniel. In this episode, I want to talk a little bit about right and wrong, good and bad, law and chaos, I guess, and where our player characters find themselves in our campaigns. What I want to do here is talk about kind of three different ways that the player characters can get on what I'll call the wrong side of the law. That is to say, I'm not going to talk about running an evil campaign. That's something completely different and not something I am very much into, we'll say. Maybe if people want me to talk about that, I can talk about why I'm not into it, but I tend to talk about things I like. So when we're thinking about where the player characters sit in the world and how the world reacts to them and what is right and wrong and that kind of thing, obviously it depends on the world you're in. Adventurers are generally, in old school games, exploring lost tombs and taking treasure, right? That could be looked at as thievery, right? They're thieves, they're stealing stuff, right? They might be stealing from an evil empire, but they might still be thieves, right? So depending on how you want to base these things, but let's assume for the most part, and this is what I generally do with my group, is that the party ultimately wants to do good, right? They're not out to murder, assassinate, and destroy what would be society, right? We kind of think of it that way. And because of this, we shouldn't have too much trouble with what I'm going to call the murder hobo thing. If somehow you've never heard that term before, let me just quickly talk about what a murder hobo is. The murder hobo is the idea that player characters have no home, right? That they are kind of traveling around from place to place, town to town, adventure to adventure. They are killing monsters and stealing their treasure, right? So that's the murder part, right? And they're hobos because they don't stay in one place. And what that means is that they don't have time to build ties. So whatever they do is whatever they do. They do what is right for them in the moment to get them the treasure, and they don't care about the consequences. This is certainly one way to play, but I think it works best when you're doing just straight up, not a whole lot of time in town and stuff. You're just going to dungeons, coming out, treating the treasure almost like award points, right, in a video game, as opposed to treating it like an actual world the player characters are in making decisions. Because clearly, if the player characters are raiding places, whether they be towns or lairs of monsters, etc., it's going to bring repercussions. And this is often presented as the stick. If we want to talk about the carrot and the stick thing, they were just talking about that on the Rulebook podcast. Because it's like, well, if you're going to be a murder hobo and cause trouble in town, well, then the town guard's going to chase you, or high-level characters are going to come get you. In fact, OD&D even says if the characters are kind of getting out of hand, like Conan might come and kick their butts, right? And I believe it's the expert book, could be the basic book, that actually kind of hints at maybe a dragon intervening. This is not something I am on board with. I think that if the player characters are murder hobo-y and they're getting out of hand, and this is not fun for you running the game, I think that becomes a conversation that you need to have with them. Like, hey, I thought we were playing at least somewhat heroic characters. You guys are walking to towns now that you're 5th level and just cutting down the town guard. Sending the guard after them, making them bandits on the run, just doesn't feel right in that situation, because that's not what they want to be, right? They're not trying to be bandits on the run. They just want it to be reckless and killing stuff. So murder hobos is their own thing. And I don't even consider that like an evil party. It's just kind of, go knock stuff over the head, take its treasure, right? Just like very old video games, probably just like modern video games. It can be fun, right? But I think for a long-term sandbox type campaign, this type of play doesn't always work out. So putting that to the side, let's talk about where the players sit in a sandbox and how being on the right or wrong side of the law can work. So if you're running a more linear type campaign, that is to say that you've got a big bad, if you will. There's something happening. It's event-based over the course of your campaign, and you know that you start here, you end here. Players have room to move in the middle, much like an adventure path. The only way this can usually work and not derail the adventure path is if it's baked into it. And to me, that's another, I don't know. I don't want to trick the characters into being on the wrong side of, again, the law, right? If you're an adventure path and you're supposed to be stopping the evil cult of blah, 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 tricking the players as a dungeon master, and again, I say as a dungeon master, not as NPCs, into thinking that they're doing something that they would want to do, right? They'd be proud of, but in fact, they're not. That you can get away with once, You know, all this whole time, your patron has been the Dracula, the vampire, right? That's basically one time in an entire group's lifespan that you can get away with that without the players being like, we can't trust anyone because everyone that assigns us something might stab us in the back. We don't want to establish that. So if you are running something that's a little more linear and you've got this like hidden NPC that's tricking the PCs into doing bad things, make sure that you're dropping enough clues that they have a chance of figuring it out. Because that big reveal is nothing to the players if they didn't see it coming at least a little bit insensitive. They're not a little bit curious about why this wizard keeps leaving them periodically throughout the adventure and coming back, as opposed to just sticking with them the whole time, right? They're going to start going, where is this person going? What's going on? That's interesting story. Having that all happen where the PCs don't see it, and I don't care if you're rolling deception checks or if the wizard has a teleporter, making it so they never know anything's happening, then all of a sudden in the final confrontation, no, I'm evil. Again, that's less satisfying, I think, for PCs. So what is the solution? What is a way that works that I think is more fair and more fun? That's when we get into sandboxing. So the beauty of the sandbox is that in the world, you can still have your extreme evils and your extreme goods, but there's lots of stuff in between. And sometimes the player characters will need to make choices as to who they work with or allow to keep doing what they're doing. In other words, don't interfere with, because there's something bigger to worry about. That is to say, if there's an evil wizard that has a tower raising some undead, right now, that might not be the top priority if there's another evil wizard that's bringing dragons down on the town right this second, right? We've got all these other things going on. It could also be a wizard that raises the undead that you might not think of as a good character. Maybe you don't want to involve yourself with those kind of people. They might have the secrets that you need to defeat those dragons. So you might make a compromise or make a pact temporarily with those people. That's what I like. In my campaign, I currently have 2 incredibly powerful wizards. One is on the side of law, the other on chaos. And neither one, they're kind of balancing each other on this island. And I mean, other things, they're not fighting. They're just like, they're both there. And what happens is the player characters have dealt with both sides. They lean towards the lawful wizard because that's what they are, right? They're heroes. They're trying to do stuff. And they suspect the chaotic wizard is up to stuff, but sometimes they need access to things that she's got. Like she has an entrance to the underworld. She's the only one that has one. So they need to make deals with her to do that. She, of course, being a powerful and smart NPC, isn't like, well, go kill those innocent people if you want. No, she has more subtle things. Here, let me know what's happening over here. Report to me back about this. And of course, they're willing to do it, knowing full well that that information might not be ideal to be giving out. And they're careful about how they do it because, again, they know they're kind of making a deal with the devil, if you will. And what's interesting is, with my particular group, is they found another entrance to the underworld, and they didn't even tell the good wizard about it. They're keeping that to themselves. So again, they don't even fully trust what would be considered the forces of law because they know that in the scope of things, they have to make decisions. They have to decide, okay, you're the force of law, so in general, you're good. But at the same time, there could be things you're doing that I don't like, so I'm not going to reveal my full hand to you. I don't want you to bring the law down as it would be on me. You, on the other hand, are the forces of chaos. I definitely don't agree with everything you're doing, but at the same time, you have resources I need. So I may have to deal with you, and I'm not just going to walk in there with my sword and try to take it from you. So this is where we create really interesting situations. The kind of, I think, boring, old-fashioned moral dilemma of you kill the monster and then there's a monster baby, that puts the players on the spot, and honestly, you don't want to have the player that does the thing that you don't want to do, right? So this is not the situation that I like to create. I love to create situations where it's more political, if you will, right? The actual actions of the main force of chaos isn't so directly evil, if you will, but it's definitely corrupting and it's definitely not ideal. But sometimes the player characters have to deal with it in a political manner, if you will. Ultimately, do I think that they might try to defeat this evil wizard? They might not. It really comes down to what else they have on the books, right? What they're working on, what is happening. Will there come a time when they need to defeat her because she's doing something that fully goes against where they're at, or she tries to pull a favor from them that they just won't do. That's the story that emerges when we have interesting NPCs on both sides, if you will, of the law that both want to work, or all want to work with the PCs. And you have this nebulous situation where not all problems are solved by the paladins. Sometimes they're solved by the rogues. So I would love to know how you handle these types of things. Do you put really in-your-face moral dilemmas? Do you have ultimate evils and ultimate goods? Is everybody just neutral in the middle? Do you try to make it so that your PCs sometimes take a deal they don't want to take to make something interesting in the world, that is, dangle something really nice in front of them by somebody they know they'll have to owe? Or do you just not deal with that part? They're bad guys, we go fight them, that's the way it is. Let me know. I would love to know in the comments below. There's obviously lots of ways to run games, and I'd love to hear how you do it. Down there, you're going to find a link to my Discord server if you want to extend the conversation over there. Lots of great people over there talking about running games, designing games, and all things RPG. Also, there's a link down there to my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. I'll talk to you soon.